This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
Hello, everybody. We will get started here shortly. I'm going to wait for a few more people to get on, and then I'm going to do my PSAs for those of you that don't know who I am. I'd like to welcome Santino, my co-host, to the stage. How are you, Santino?
I'm doing fabulous, Jenny. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to this space with Josh. He's our walking encyclopedia. I just absolutely love his information. So, also too, everybody, I want to let you know, come back, over on my Telegram page, because I do a lot of lives over there. We're gonna have Captain Kyle on, and we're gonna have a surprise guest pop in with him as well. So that should be another fiery podcast. So, real quickly, everybody, I'm gonna start recording here in my studio. I'm gonna do a little bit of PSAs. That's what I normally do, just so you guys can know who I am. So with that, everybody, good afternoon. I am Jenny. I am the owner and the host of the Revival of America. Today we're going to have Josh Reid in the house. I call him the Human Encyclopedia. He has got a lot of great information, everybody. So if you are not following Josh Reid, I highly suggest you do. He and Alpha Warrior do a lot of things together as well. So they are a great team up. So go follow him. He should be in here shortly. But also, too, everybody, if you come into this podcast late and you want to share this information with maybe friends or family, we are being listened to in over 100 countries. And you can follow the podcast on the podcast hosts, which are iHeartRadio, Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Google, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Podbean, Riverside, Amazon Music. I also put all of them on my social media, so you can follow any of the social medias as well, which are Jenny JERREAD Facebook, at Jenny_JERREAD right here on X, at JJERREAD Rumble, at JJERREAD Instagram, at JJERREAD True Social, The Revival of America on Telegram, The Revival of America on YouTube, and the official JJERREAD on TikTok. And basically on TikTok, I just do little shorts to kind of give you updates on the show lineups. I typically do anywhere from 6 to 8 shows a week in between my day gig. So please, everybody, if you have not been paying attention to us, we are bringing a lot of positive information. We're making a lot of great positive noise. And I tell my audience all the time, everybody, hang on to the positive. Because we are.
Jenny, you're having difficulties with your mic?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Where did I leave off, everybody?
Just start from the beginning of the paragraph, the couple sentences.
Oh, okay. I was just letting everybody know. I let my audience know to be careful who you listen to and who you follow. Everybody, there's a lot of doom and gloom, fear mongering, and all that kind of stuff going on. So please be careful, everybody. Stick and stay with the 3 to 5 people that haven't led you wrong in the course of your journey here, because more than likely they're going to get you over the hump of this. So hang in there, everybody. Stay patient. This didn't happen overnight. It took several years to get in this situation. But it is unraveling, and we are winning. And I suggest everybody and anybody, if you're wondering who to follow, definitely, if you're not already, follow Donald J. Trump, our president, because he is basically telling us, without directly telling us, what is going on. However, he is being more upfront now than ever, and not as transparent, or excuse me, cryptic and coded like he talks a lot in the past. Because you can't give your enemy your next move, right? So please, everybody, be careful who you follow, what you're listening to, and what you're putting into your mind. mind. And then also I want to let everybody know we do have a newsletter on the website at therevivalofamerica.com. Basically, that gives you updates on the shows, weekly shows, guests, and times, and where they're going to be, whether they're going to be here on X, whether they're going to be on my Rumble page, or they're going to be on Telegram. So sign up for that. It is free. And then also, last but not least, everybody, if you have a story or a journey to tell, please feel free to reach out to me at the TROA submissions at yahoo.com. This is just for the submissions. So give me a synopsis of your story. We do vet the stories because unfortunately we do have those people that make up bullshit stories just to get on a podcast, right? So we will vet it, reach out to you, and then your voice will come on the show and tell your story, your journey, because it's your voice, your journey that's going to help get us into this new world that we are coming into. And then also, if you want to direct email me, if you have a question or a concern, you can send that to the revivalofamerica at yahoo.com, and I will respond to you there. But no, I will not randomly reach out to you through a DM, through a text, or an email. If you email me or DM me, I will respond to you, but I'm not going to randomly reach out to you. So please block report that individual. Let me know so I can make sure they're not in any of my groups. So with that, everybody, Josh has entered the room. So I would like to welcome Josh to the stage. Josh, I just sent you the co-host. So whenever you get it, go ahead and respond. The human encyclopedia is here. How are you, Josh? And then Santino, why don't you go ahead and do your thing that you do so well? Go ahead, Santino. Can you hear me? Hello, Josh. How are you?
What's up, good people? How we all doing today?
Dan, we're doing good. How are you doing? You are on fire, my friend, giving some great, well, you always do. I call you the walking human encyclopedia. So you're on fire, my friend.
You know, I love the idea of the human encyclopedia. It's interesting because people typically come to that conclusion on their own, although I've been called Joshopedia and the human encyclopedia for well over a few years now. I did a show the other day with Scott McKay, Michael Jaco, and Scott's like, you know who Josh reminds me of? Is you remember back in the day we used to have those encyclopedias? Josh is like this walking encyclopedia. And as much as I don't see that, I'm glad that you all do. I appreciate it.
Well, you're giving a lot of great insights, and you're telling, you're transparent, right? You're not leaving anything out. So I appreciate that because there's so much going on right now. A lot of the doom and gloom, the fear mongering, the never Trumpers, all of a sudden Trumpers, or the Trumpers, all of a sudden not Trumpers. Just so much bullshit going on. So I'm so glad you're here. And everybody, Josh typically gives us about an hour of his time. So at some point we will have you request some mics if you want to ask questions to Josh, and we can answer those for you, or he can because he's the human encyclopedia. But real quickly, Santino, why don't you go ahead and do what you do, my friend? Let everybody know what to do.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Hello, Joshua or Josh. Can everybody please go down to the purple pill that is at the bottom right of your phone? Could you please go in there? Can you like the space? Could you like and share the space? In fact, could you quote and share the space? Get this out there. The reason why we want to do that is because we want more listeners in here, more voices, and we want to unite, not divide. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Santino. So Josh, so that roundtable was great with you and Patriot Street Fighter, Nino. I believe it was Alpha in there too.
Alpha was in the one a few days before. Then Alpha and I did a show 2 nights ago. Alpha's only show with Josh, and yeah. So I was burned out. I couldn't even do a show last night just because I was so burned out from like the last few days of everything that happened. But I'm glad to see that we held the line and we were spot on. Now, Jenny, you mentioned something interesting here. You're talking about all the doom and gloom. You're talking about all the kind of chaos that was occurring on the social media channels. I think that this is a good point to open up at and discuss this a little bit, because whether people realize it or not, what we just endured over the last 12 days was a massive psychological warfare campaign. This was 5GW in action, people. I put this post out the other day, and I think it's pretty spot on, and I'm going to read it to people. On the global stage, rhetoric is a weapon, not a conversation. It's not just words, it's a psychological tool designed to provoke emotions, hijack reason, and steer public perception. Over the last 12 to 14 days, we've all witnessed this firsthand. Certain influencers, leaders, and mainstream media didn't offer any clarity. They offered chaos. Not strategy, not sound bites, not solutions, but emotional manipulation. This is psychological warfare and it's been deployed with precision. Sometimes it is for a reason, a purposeful distraction. Other times it is intentionally delivered to bring about a desired effect. While the world was distracted by fiery speeches, viral clips, and carefully crafted outrage, the real moves, the ones that matter, happen quietly in the backdrop. Deals were made, back channels were open, but public perception was construed towards a narrative. So the thing is for everybody out there is always ask, what are they distracting you from? What shifted while the world was fixated on the spectacle? If you felt confused, overwhelmed, or emotionally charged, that was the point. Stay grounded. And there's a second side to this because I called out a few influencers, one specifically that was flip flopping all over the place this last week, and there's quite a few of them out there, people. But have you ever noticed all the echo chambers on X with big audiences who never have anything intelligent to say themselves, but just regurgitate what others say?
Oh,
If you
yes.
scroll through your feed, you will see them. So there's a few different Q posts that kind of define what this is, right? There's one. If people believe the majority of people feel a certain way about something, do they go with the majority or to feel accepted? If the majority of people believe something does that imply it must be right? Does this give rise to we are the majority mindset? And then we define echo chamber, a metaphorical description of a situation in which beliefs are amplified or reinforced by communication and repetition inside a closed system. Prior to new platforms, networks connecting people, did the old guard have full control of that? They absolutely did. Did the old guard learn from the mistakes? 2016 election, etc. Yes, they did. And now tasking all new platforms and networks to censor. When you are awake, you can clearly see it. And what that means, and this post was built in 2018. What we have to understand here is that the deep state, the globalists, the old guard, Khazari Mafia, whatever you want to call them, are still well in play on the information side. And information is the largest domain that we all play within every day in our lives. In a wartime perspective or a war strategy perspective for everybody out there, the one thing that you have to recognize is that we have many different warfare domains. You'll hear space, land, air, sea. You'll hear cyber warfare. You'll hear all these different domains of warfare. But at the end of the day, information dominates all of these domains, which means that information is the primary domain of warfare. And that is what we are involved in right now, specifically on X and in these spaces. So I'm going to read a few of these other posts that Q put out because I want people to understand the relevance of what Q was saying 5, 6, 7 years ago. Listen to this one. Create media blitz, a scare campaign, talking points, alarmist. Use pro-narrative minded authorities to provide foundation to support. Deploy circular reporting and groupthink tactics, echo chambers, to artificially raise public outcry. Use public outcry to justify billions of dollars of taxpayers' dollars spent. Rinse, repeat. There's another one here. A population that trusts without individual thought. A population that obeys without challenge. A population that remains outside of free thought and instead remains isolated, living in fear inside of a closed loop echo chamber of the controlled mainstream media. This is not about politics. This is about preserving our way of life and protecting the generations that follow. We are living in biblical times, children of light versus children of darkness, united against the invisible enemy of all humanity. Now, I find that these are some of the most important posts out there because it's portraying what you're witnessing every day on social media. Now, if you go back and review everything you saw over the last 12 to 14 days with the Iran-Israel conflict, if you go to a lot of these not so MAGA anymore influencers who have big audiences, what you'll find out is they immediately turn to World War III, end of times, end of days. It's the end of the world. Trump is Satan. He's dragging us into another endless war. He's no different than the neocons, blah, 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 blah. If you're sitting there thinking that that was those people's opinions that brought that about, you're wrong. That was a constructed narrative utilized by the opposition. It's psychological warfare at its finest. And if you see those influencers and you know who they are, you, be my guest to unfollow them. That's up to you. But I want you to see it because the neocons were out there. Oh, the United States is involved. The United States is involved. We weren't involved until we dropped bombs on Fordo and the other nuclear facilities. That is the first time that we got involved in all of that. Who was providing intelligence to Israel? That was the UK. The United Kingdom was providing strategic satellite configurations and intelligence directly to Israel. It was not the United States, from what we have learned. Okay? So all the neocons coming out there hyping that the US is involved. You remember Ted Cruz on Tucker Carlson? Oh, we are right now. And Tucker Carlson's like, what do you mean we? He's like, oh, us, the US and Israel. And he goes, we're not involved in it. He goes, oh yeah, we are. We're helping them. He goes, whoa, hold on. You're making a very bold statement here that we are helping them. That means that we're attacking a sovereign nation. He goes, well, it's Israel, but we're involved. So Ted Cruz was out of the loop. But Ted Cruz is following talking point narratives that were constructed to him by most likely AIPAC. Okay? Now, the end of the world stuff. If you go back to about June, I think it's about 16th, Israel realized that Trump was not backing them strategically within this war, even though I think Trump came into it with the full assurance to Netanyahu that he was going to. And I think it was a rug pull situation. But what did we see? We saw Israel start putting out war propaganda. Israel put out the IDF put out a video which showed Iran basically, you know, if Israel doesn't stop Iran, Iran's not going to stop at Israel. They're going to go destroy the entire world. And they like listed a whole bunch of cities and said that you're next. And then you have Netanyahu's rhetoric saying that, oh, New York City's next after Israel and America is dead. This is the type of psychological warfare that we are dealing with. Now, why would Netanyahu or the IDF put out a video like that or say that type of thing? What he's actually referring to is psychological projection. Netanyahu was projecting out what would happen if Israel was on the brink of collapse due to an Iran war. And if this war was allowed to continue, Israel, without U.S. support or Western support, would have lost. And they would have resorted to what's known as the Samson option. So the video the IDF put out, and you can find it on my feed on X, the video was a threat to the world that if they don't get involved, all the cities will be destroyed, because that's Israel's last hope option, is they nuke all of the nations of the world, because if they go down, everybody go down. It's a blackmail that Israel has utilized for a very long time to get other nations to construe to their agenda. And what we actually just saw, and I'm going to kind of point this out in the forefront here, what we actually just saw was Donald Trump rug pull Israel on the first 10 to 12 days of this war. Israel go out there, threaten the world, and then in the back end, what people didn't see on the intelligence side was Israel wanted to use tactical nukes against Iran's facilities. Pakistan came out and said, if you nuke Iran, we're going to nuke you, which now Donald Trump has to intervene and come in at a strategic point. And this is why I think that we actually bombed the nuclear facilities. But we also know that there was back channels open during all of this. But there's something interesting that happened in the midst of all of this. So in the midst of all of this rhetoric that was going back and forth, if you remember Donald Trump going after Medvedev in Russia, Trump was going after Medvedev. Medvedev came out and said some things about other countries giving Iran a nuclear weapon. Then Trump came out and posed a reply directly to, or called out Medvedev. He said, I hear former President Medvedev from Russia casually throwing around the N-word nuclear and saying that he and other countries would supply nuclear warheads to Iran. Did he really say that, or is that just a figment of my imagination? If he did say that, and if confirmed, please let me know immediately. The N-word should not be treated so casually. I guess that's why Putin's the boss. By the way, if anyone thinks our hardware was great over the weekend, far and away the strongest and the best equipment we've had, 20 years advanced over the pack, our nuclear submarines, blah, 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 right? So he goes on to say this. Well, Medvedev came out and replied to Trump. Now, I want you to listen to what he says, because I'm going to put something together for you and show you how Donald Trump is actually giving you, me, and everybody who's paying attention comms on the back end. Medvedev comes out and says, regarding President Trump's concerns, I condemn the U.S. strike on Iran. It failed to achieve its objectives. However, Russia has no intention of supplying nuclear weapons to Iran because, unlike Israel, we are parties to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. That is key and clutch to understand right now. So if you go back, Donald Trump at the beginning of this called out Tucker Carlson. And kooky Tucker Carlson, all of this stuff. Well, whenever Donald Trump says something, people listen and they go and try to investigate it. I think that that's one important thing that he understands, that his words actually matter. And that we need to understand that his words matter. Because the moment that that happened, people went out and started listening to Tucker Carlson. And at the same time, Tucker Carlson dropped an interview with Ted Cruz. And it just so happens within the first few minutes of that interview, Ted Cruz makes a complete ass of himself in the interview. The ass that he made was he didn't know anything about Iran. He didn't know the culture. He didn't know the demographics. He knew nothing of it. But yet he's calling for a regime change in the U.S. to bomb the shit out of this country, but knew nothing about it. In other words, Donald Trump was exposing the neocon agenda that still exists within Senate and Congress. And he's pointing fingers to these people indirectly by bringing attention to people like Tucker Carlson, which the next day, Tucker and Trump had a great call and they're buddy-buddy again. A good example of this is back when the Republican primaries were going on and you had Ron DeSanctimonious. Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis were enemies at each other's throats. And what did that do? It divided MAGA. It divided the Republicans. But what it actually did is it showed you who was loyal to Donald Trump and who was just on the bandwagon for a ride and who were disloyalists. Who were the neocons? Who were not truly MAGA, but along for the ride and jumping ship the moment they saw a candidate that fit their idealism. Immediately after the Republican primary and Donald Trump won, what happened? Trump and DeSantis were friends again, talking again. DeSantis is probably going to have a part in Donald Trump's administration in about a year and a half to 2 years. In other words, Donald Trump rug pulled all the non-MAGA. He did it based upon loyalty. He went to war with Ron DeSantis, not because he hates Ron DeSantis, because it was nothing more than a movie, a scripted movie that you were watching to basically divide the movement about who is truly loyal to Donald Trump and who is not. And in that case, it was more specific to donors and money. It was more specific to who is coming in and trying to fund Donald Trump that might be a neocon, who might be, you know, a non-MAGA conservative that just wants to get influence on the upside. And that's exactly what that did. So every time that you're seeing Donald Trump call somebody out, even Massey, there's something more going on here with Massey, right? Now, Donald Trump, a few years ago, endorsed Tom Massey. Now, Tom Massey, he's an isolationist. He's a Ron Paul kind of libertarian conservative. He believes in isolationism. We shouldn't get involved in conflicts overseas. I understand that. But Donald Trump really doesn't give a shit about that. The reason Donald Trump is bringing him to the limelight and calling him out is because what is Tom Massey saying right now? End the Fed. Tom Massey just introduced a bill to end the Fed. He's bringing attention to Tom Massey because Tom Massey is going against the Federal Reserve. And on Donald Trump's other side, he's going against Powell. He's going against the Federal Reserve. So all the things that he does He operates in large extremes, but he does it to bring attention to things, to show you what is actually happening on the other end. So I think it's important for everybody to understand that there are comms going on with every single post that Donald Trump makes. For instance, like the other day, he posted a meme, reposted a meme on True Social saying, "Trust the plan. Nothing can stop what's coming. The hunters become the hunted." The day before, he said, "I guess I was the hunted, and now I'm the hunter," in an interview. Well, this is a direct call out to the Q community. What people didn't see is a X profile from OG Anon tagged Dan Scavino in a post and asked him if, hey, can you give us a hint or a clue that Donald Trump is communicating us with the Q boards? Immediately after he posted that, about an hour later, is when Donald Trump posted the trust the plan meme. But OG Anon also put out a few other things. He said, "Hey, can you give us a hint or like Thunderstruck or Enter Sandman or what was the other one? It was another verse that's utilized on the boards." And so what happens is a few hours later, the Supreme Court comes out with a decision. And Donald Trump comes out and responds to it. But when he responded to it, he used the phrase that OG Anon put in the post. Then a day later, Dan Scavino posts a video on his profile with the song Enter Sandman as in a direct response to OG Anon's post. In other words, they're communicating with us. They can't do it directly. They're doing it through proxy, and we have to pay attention to what they're saying. So yesterday was a really, really interesting day when it came to Donald Trump and everything that's going on. He came out and dropped the F-bomb on mainstream media. I absolutely love this. But we know that he had a phone call with Netanyahu a few hours prior. What do you think he said on that phone call to Netanyahu? Do you think he was like other presidents who lay over and let Netanyahu walk over them? Do you think that he just got on this phone call, was all nice and, "Hey, Bibi, how you doing? Oh, call back your missiles." No, he chewed the shit. He chewed the shit out of Netanyahu. And see, that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing this divergence in American and Israeli relations because of what occurred over the course of the last 2 weeks. Now, the last 2 weeks are really interesting because Israel, from what we gather, although this military plan, strike plan, has been in progress for quite a long time, what we find out is that Israel acted on their own accord because, well, that's how Israel operates. It just so happens that Netanyahu decided to act on the same day that Assent voted to keep him in the power for another 6 months. Go figure. But Israel made a really, really big mistake because they're never going to live this one down. And I want to kind of explain that for everybody out here. So when we understand that Israel attacking Iran at the beginning of this war basically destroyed U.S.-Iranian negotiations that were occurring at the same time. Okay? That's Israel interfering with U.S. diplomacy. That is a freaking no-no in the eyes of Donald Trump. Okay? So what happens next? Israel is out there claiming the U.S. has our back. The U.S. is involved in this. But we knew during the first 5 days of the war, that was not true. It was not happening. Even though Donald Trump came out with strong rhetoric as it was not the truth. And I think that this was to expose Netanyahu and expose Israel. But so we have all of this happen. But then what do we learn? The U.S. strikes Iran, Fordo, Natanz, and the other facilities. And we find out the next day that this is one of the most, and by the way, when you're listening to mainstream media and you're hearing what they're saying, pay very close attention to the words. They say that this was one of the most secure operations ever. Zero leaks by the military, the Pentagon, and in the White House. But yet we find out that Iran was tipped off of the strikes. So if there was no leaks, then how was Iran tipped off? How was Iran? Well, the day before the strikes on Iran, Donald Trump met with the army chief of Pakistan, had lunch with him. Pakistan, I'm getting phone calls. I apologize.
Yeah, popular guy over there.
Yeah, Pakistan is one of the top allies of Iran. Well, the next day, the strike happens, and then Iran says that they were notified. They were notified by the U.S. of what was about to happen. So what do? Oh, they go ahead and do a supplementary strike in Qatar, and they notify the U.S., hey, it's 1 o'clock good for you? Hey, our missiles are going to come in from this direction. Make sure you shoot them down. We don't want any civilian casualties. Iran did that. Well, what happened there? If you go back to 2020 after the killing of Soleimani, Iran contacted Donald Trump through back channels, and this video is on my feed as well. And what they said during this communication in back channels is that, hey, we have to kind of stand up for our people and we have to retaliate, but we don't want to, cause a war. We don't want civilians to die. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to send some missiles into Iraq. They're going to hit over by the Marine barracks, but they're not going to hit it. Guaranteed. Well, Iran did that, and that's exactly what happened. And Donald Trump releases this information like 3 years ago, even though we were reporting on it when it happened because we had it through back channels that this was going on. In other words, Iran is willing to negotiate in the back channels, but they have to have a public perception in the front end towards their people. And Donald Trump knew this. And by Iran warning Donald Trump on the retaliation, that is a sign of mutual respect. So Donald Trump relayed that mutual respect back to them during the bombing of Fordow and the other nuclear facilities, which then they, through message, relayed right back to him in their response to that with the missile sent over to Qatar. Now, this is truly important because what it's showing you is there's backdoor diplomacy occurring. Now, a lot of things happened the last 2 days. It was really odd when Donald Trump announced the ceasefire. The ceasefire didn't make sense that we're going to let Israel and Iran continue their final operations. In other words, there was something going on inside Iran with Israel that Donald Trump wanted to see fulfilled. And this is where I want to kind of bring this into context for people. Number one is you have Donald Trump announces a ceasefire. 15 minutes later, throughout all social media, you have Iran coming out saying they'd never seen a ceasefire agreement. There is no ceasefire, and they're not agreeing to a ceasefire. About an hour later, you see Iranian media coming out saying, yep, there is a ceasefire. We will cease all operations in 12 hours. Even though there was still things happening. During this 12 hours of time happening, Israel assassinated a top nuclear scientist and they bombarded heavily, the largest missile bombardment by Israel, the whole area where Khamenei and his regime would be in their bunkers. In other words, if you start to look at this from this perspective, was it Khamenei and the mullahs and their regime negotiating the back channels with Donald Trump? Or was it IRGC hardliners and leaders like the president who were negotiating in the backdrop with Donald Trump? I would say that it wasn't Khamenei and it wasn't the mullahs. It was the IRGC communicating the backdrop. When the ceasefire was negotiated, originally what you saw was the clerics, the theocracy come out in response saying, there's no ceasefire. What are you talking about? And then the military comes out and says, yes, there was. We're good. In other words, you just watch an internal coup occur within Iran. An internal coup occurred in Iran, and Israel was part of this regime change, I think, that was in progress. And a lot of the details are still not out yet. Nobody's seen Khamenei. He has not come forth. He's not made any statements yet. But I think we're going to see the ramifications of this over the course of the next week or so. Now, let's talk about the bigger aspect of things, because to be honest, people, this was not about Iran. This has nothing to do with Iran. And you say, what do you mean? Like, this has everything to do with Iran. It has nothing to do with Iran. This has everything to do with what we consider to be the old guard. The old guard system, for people who are new to this understanding, is the banking cartels, the satanic elite, the bloodlines, the European bloodlines. It is the perpetuators that brought us the Federal Reserve, World War I, World War II, the Treaty of Versailles. It's the ones that brought us all the chaos in the world over the last 100 years. Some people will say, well, that's the deep state. No, the deep state is a faction in the United States that's infiltrated in our government. That's the deep state. The globalists are a group of factions. The old guard is a very, very old factions and groups that have aligned together for hundreds and hundreds of years to rule the world. This is the Satanists. This is the occult, the dark occultists. This is the global banking dynasty. Now, a lot of that is operated clandestinely through the British Empire. If you go back to what happened in Iran in 53, the installing of the Shah, the overthrowing, this was BP, British Petroleum. This was all about the control of resources and logistics and money. At the end of the day, everything that you're watching right now falls into one of four categories: resources, logistics, which is the moving of resources and resources, energy, and the flow of money. Everything we're watching deals with that, and that's what the last 60 years have been, and why the destabilization of the Middle East was so important to the British Empire's homogeny. So think about it. If you allowed Sunni Muslims or Shia Muslims to rise up and unify their resources together and control the trade within the Middle East, the number one supplier of oil to the world over the last 50 years. Well, they rise up as first world nations. They rise up as superpowers. Now you have no reason for NATO or Great Britain or any of this stuff. Now you have more competition, as well as a massive loss of revenue. So the control that started in the 1950s in these areas was derived to control the resources and the flow of resources in this region. And you can see this with what happened in the 70s. I mean, we went out there and funded, and when I say we, I mean Western intelligence agencies went out there and funded Saddam Hussein to rise up against the Shia Muslims, which was Iran. And they did that to control the resources, because if they knew that if the Shia Muslim community ever rose up unified in that area, and this is like, think of parts of Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, this is the Shia crescent, right? If they ever rose up, it would be the end of the British Empire's rule of resources over these domains. So we funded Saddam Hussein to go to war with Iran over all of this. And obviously what we get is Western blowback that comes about from this. We get the Khomeini regime comes in, not Khomeini, I think it's what's his name, Robinard and Khomeini. They come into Iran. We have Iran-Contra that occurs after that, where we secretly fund Iran with weapons. I mean, it's a shit show in these areas, but what we were trying to do is we were trying to control the regimes of other countries, to control the flow of money, resources, and the supply chain. So this culminates into the 1990s, right? What happens in the 1990s? Well, we get the first Gulf War. Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait. Well, what's Kuwait? That's BP oil. That's British Petroleum. Well, why did Saddam Hussein do that? Because the Western intelligence pulled the rug on Saddam Hussein. They backed him again during the whole Iran conflict, and then they pulled the rug on him, and he became the enemy. So he knew he had to go out there and control some level of resources at this point. So he invaded Kuwait, and they threw the hammer at him. Even though he asked George Bush, hey, should I do this? And George Bush is like, yeah, sure, go ahead and do it. And that's exactly what he did. And he got absolutely decimated by Western militaries. Then we got September 11th. I mean, if we want to think that September 11th was done by a group of 19 Muslims from, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Afghanistan, you're absolutely on crack. This is Western intelligence all over it. And it comes about because of people like Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein were rebuilding, but they're rebuilding outside of an infrastructure of the Western nations. They were trying to do exactly what we're talking about, is unifying the Shia, the Sunni, and the Kurdish people into one collaborative front to control the resources in that region. Well, one country would have definitely declined and had a hard problem with that. That country was Israel. Israel is not kind of an agent of the British Empire. They were obviously owned and operated by the Rothschilds and the global banking dynasty, but they have a prophetic investment in that land and in that area, so they become a good puppet to use to destabilize that whole region. Well, what happened? We had collaborations from deep state intelligence apparatus in Israel perform September 11th. I'll say it. I'm not afraid to say it. That's the absolute truth. And why is that the truth? Because they needed a false flag for the United States to get involved in their war. So for a long time, we've seen this massive destabilization into the Middle East, and it's been primarily about the control of natural resources. So when we start to kind of pull back and look at this, one of the things that we see with Donald Trump, specifically this year, is that everything he is doing is about the allocation of resources. Think about it. Donald Trump comes in and he tries to secure resource deals all around the world. He tries to renegotiate the world, correct? He utilizes tariffs as a methodology to get people to the table with large extremes. He goes out there and starts saying that he wants to control Greenland and that the military option is absolutely on the table. The same thing with Canada. He wants them to become the 51st state. He goes out there and secures the Panama Canal from China. He goes out there, secures a mineral deal in the eastern Donbass region of Ukraine. We'll talk about that in a second. But think about this, is you got about $7 trillion of natural resources on the island of Greenland. Plus, Greenland also provides strategic military defensive posture against China and Russia and the rest of the world. Number two, Canada. Northern Canada is one of the richest fields that we have of uranium and other natural resources. The Northern Canada houses trillions of dollars of rare earth minerals, metals, oil, gas, uranium, etc. So when Donald Trump's talking about a 51st state, what does he do? He puts that out there, and Carney's like, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. He has Carney at the White House, and he's talking to him about it. And Carney's like, well, that's not going to happen. Donald Trump says, well, let's keep it on the table. You never know what occurs. 2 weeks later, he announces the Golden Dome, the defense dome that the United States is going to build, and Carney says, we want in on that, and Donald Trump's like, oh, you want in on that? Well, maybe we can make a deal. You become the 51st state. Well, that's the extreme level of the art of the deal that Donald Trump goes with. Carney's going to come back and say, no, we're not going to do the art of the deal, or we're not going to do the 51st state, but what do you want? Donald Trump's going to come back and say, we want mineral rights in Northern Canada. We want to control Northern Canada just like we control Alaska. At the same time, Donald Trump announced an expansion of jobs in the Alaska area for natural resources. So partnership agreements with Canada in Northern Canada is going to be very, very strategic to the future, and that's what Donald Trump wanted all along. He just negotiated peace between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Democratic Republic of the Congo's president came out 2 months ago and said, if you can negotiate peace, we will give you full rights to the Congo's mineral rights. Well, the United States now has that. Controlling the Panama Canal, that is logistic control. Exactly what we're talking about here. Iran has massive amounts of natural resources, but controls the Straits of Hormuz, which is trillions upon trillions of dollars of trade functioning through it each year. On the other side is they supply China with 60% of Chinese oil at 30% of market price. Donald Trump wanted to reduce that 30% of market price factor from the table. And by what we're seeing, that is most likely going to happen once sanctions are released from Iran. But he's also reopening that port and making sure that China
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
can't control it at the front. He's destroying the Belt and Roads Initiative all the way through by going in and allowing the Middle East to become restabilized, because the destabilization fits a purpose on multiple points of agenda, including China's, the BRICS nations, and the Belt and Roads Initiative. So now you got to be asking yourself, okay, well, what were the tariffs about? The tariffs were directly about renegotiating all of these bad end deals. And I want to show you how this works, because the real enemies of the world are the old guard, the banking cartel. For people out there who don't know how central banks operate, this is what you have to see. We think the central banks control the flow of money. Well, what does that really mean? They control interest rates. Well, what the hell does that mean? Central banks loan money to financial institutions at the banking interest rate. Those financial institutions loan it to businesses and corporations to basically produce, manufacture, and ship logistics, the goods and services. An example of this: if Saudi Arabia has $1 billion worth of oil that is going to go to the United States, to a United States company, that oil is shipped and it's crossed over the oceans. It lands in, let's just say, Norfolk, or lands in Florida. It gets offloaded, carried on to diesel trucks and in trains. Then it gets shipped to a refinery where that oil is turned into gasoline. Then it gets put back onto trains and trucks, and it gets shipped out to gas stations to where then you pump it in your tank. Well, guess what? The company that purchased that $1 billion of oil, they don't get paid till you pump it in your car. That's a long time for that money to come to fruition. But Saudi Arabia, they want their money now. They want their $1 billion for that oil right now. So what occurs? Financial institutions who are getting their money from the central banks loan short interim capital to those companies so that they can get that oil now. Saudi Arabia can get paid. They can bring it back in. They pay that loan off with interest over time back to the financial institutions, which the financial institutions then pay back to the Federal Reserve, and everybody's happy. So now think about what happened when Donald Trump put tariffs in place. When Donald Trump comes out there and does 125% tariff on China, now that company that would want to buy that oil would have to pay 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 times more and take out that loan from that financial institution to do that. It's not sustainable. They can't do that, let alone afford the interest. The same time Donald Trump was doing the tariffs, he was telling the Federal Reserve, lower the interest rates, lower the interest rates. So this is what you need to see, is those countries couldn't survive in that environment logistically. We would have had the whole supply chain coming to a screaming halt globally. So it forced these countries to come to the table and renegotiate a deal that was fair for the United States and fair for those countries, allowing the supply chain to continue through. But Donald Trump also showed another part, is that the supply chains, the logistics supply chains, are completely manipulated throughout the world by these same entities. And that the one person that stands up with the full might and force of the United States military can change that instantaneously by putting pressure on the central banks. And that's exactly what Donald Trump did. So Donald Trump basically started renegotiating the world with all of this, but at the same time sent a threatening message to the global banking cartels that their time is limited. So here's another key part of this. I talked slowly, briefly about Ukraine, and I want to jump in because I want to go back to the resource part of it, and then we can go into further discussion. Now, Ukraine, the Donbass region in Ukraine, is rich in natural resources. I think it's estimated like $1.8 trillion worth of natural resources. This is one of the main reasons that Russia wants to control Ukraine. They want those natural resources. Okay? But now I want you to go back to 2014. Joe Biden's quid pro quo deal trying to get Shogun, the investigator in Ukraine, off of Burisma. investigating Burisma. At the time, Burisma's board of directors were Hunter Biden, Devin Archer, you had Chris Hines, so forth, right? Now, why were those guys there? Well, you have to understand what Burisma was. Burisma is an oil and gas exploration company. They are the company that discovered the rare earth minerals in oil in the eastern Donbass, and that's exactly where they're located. So why were these guys on the board of directors? To control the resources and the logistics of the resources. Why did we coup Iran in 2014? To control the resources away from Russia. Start to make a lot more sense now, doesn't it?
Yes. Wow.
All right, I'm going to pause right there. I'm going to open for Jenny or Santino or anybody who wants to jump in and comment on what I've said and expand further.
So real quickly, everybody, if you have a question for Josh, please feel free to request a mic. I will unmute your mic and you guys can ask Josh your question. So everybody, what Josh just kind of explained just goes to show how intricate and deep this really is. For those people out there, you know, saying Trump didn't do shit with these bombings and it didn't hit anything and all that kind of stuff. All the naysayers, you got to pay attention to I mean, not pay attention to it, but watch what they're saying because it's bullshit. They're not going deeper into like what Josh just explained to us. So Josh, I want to ask you, for those people that are saying with the bombings that Trump didn't do shit, he didn't hit anything, which is sheer bullshit, right? We have Hegseth coming out today and basically calling out the fake news, Trump calling out the fake news, and the MAGA so-called supporters, not so supporters, right? That they're basically fake, pushing all this nonsense that nothing happened because they obliterated it. They destroyed it. What do you have to say to those people out there? Because there's a lot of that going on right now, and the clarity for people is getting very clouded.
Good question. And I actually responded to Health Ranger's post about this the other day. What you see with those 6 entry points are where the bunker buster bombs actually went in. You have to understand that they went down 60 plus meters, most likely about 100 meters, which is about 300 feet. The explosion that occurs is occurring inside the tunnel cavities of the complex. You're not going to see much on the outside. You got to remember one thing about Fordo is that the top layer is covered with like 30 meters of rock. So just because you have an explosion that occurs below it doesn't mean you're going to have a caving in of that on the outside. But what you did see is you did see the entrances and the entrances of the tunnels all blowing up, and you saw the dust that settled over top of them. The reason that happened like that is because the bombs went underneath 300 feet down, blew up, and that blew up through the tunnels and through the entrances and the elevators out those areas. So you're not going to see like an impact crater or cavity from an explosion like that. What we saw is exactly what you would expect to see.
So I'm hearing also too, did they hit an underground city? Have you heard that?
I haven't heard anything about an underground city. I mean, Fordo, I guess, would be like an underground city. I think that that's just, maybe it's possible. Maybe that's what happened in the conspiracy world. But there's no intelligence that I've heard, whether, back-end intelligence or OSINT, that actually confirms anything like that.
So stay tuned for that one. Okay. All right. Thank you, Josh. Santino or Patriot, do you guys have a question for Josh before I go on to anybody want to request a mic? Please feel free. I do have one gentleman or gal that requested. So go ahead, Santino or Patriot, if you guys want to ask Josh a question.
I think what Josh is saying is completely accurate on all levels, all points. He's saying, when you speak about like exposure, when President Trump says something, when he puts someone in the eye, I think that us as a society believe, okay, this person's good. If President Trump puts him in here, he's good. But I'm looking right here at a visual of Dr. Oz getting a vaccination, and quote, I'm getting my vaccination sponsored by Pfizer, made by Turkish companies. Wish me luck, everybody. Then I scroll down a little bit further, and then we have have him here, voila, at a Turkish event with a pressure cooker, whatever her name is, Mamovich. So you have to understand, it's about exposure. So some of these people are there, they're given these positions, but are they good or bad? That's for us to find out. But he's placing them there in the public eye to expose them. Those histrionics will never disappear. You know, the Turkish government has sponsored Pfizer. He sponsors Pfizer. He is vaccinated, and now he has his position. Why did President Trump put him there? Because he's exposing him, and many others. And that's what we have to do. So whatever Josh is saying is completely on point. I have nothing else to add. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Santino. And you know what? You're right, Santino and Josh. You're right too. A lot of us have said it for a long time. Trump puts these people in the forefront to shine the light on them for reasons. So everybody out there bitching and complaining about this person, why is he on his team or this, that, and the other? People look deeper into it and research it, because there is a method to Trump's brilliant madness, and it's just that it's brilliant. So go ahead, Patriot.
I follow
go
it
ahead,
every.
Santino.
I follow it every day. His method is perfect.
It's brilliant. Absolutely. Go ahead, Patriot.
Oh, hey, Josh, Santino, Jenny, how y'all doing, everybody? Josh, everything you said is on point. I can't really break it down like you can, but I definitely see it the way you do. One of the main talking points we heard when the precision missile strike hit Iran was that we were getting into another endless war. One thing that I did hear up in diligence space from someone, I think no, I was in another space. It wasn't diligence, but they mentioned how the market didn't reflect us going into endless war. Josh, can you speak on that real quick, because it seems like our parallel economy it seemed like to me that is an indicator to me that the parallel economy that we had during the Biden administration is now apparently our economy. Do you think you could speak in regards to that real quick, Josh?
Which part? The parallel economy or the
the market didn't reflect, or the economy didn't reflect us going into endless war when people said it originally.
Right. Well, good call, because right before the Fordo attacks, or the U.S. bombing Fordo, Bitcoin dropped massively. Right now, the futures market didn't open until 6 p.m. on that Sunday, so we couldn't really see that, but they weren't affected really at all. In other words, everybody is hanging on back-end intelligence, which Donald Trump is showing the globalists that this doesn't work anymore. That's why they dumped Bitcoin. But what did Bitcoin do a few days later? Skyrocketed. Those institutions dropping Bitcoin because they thought that this was the global war. So in perspective for that, I've said from the get-go that the globalists will never give up power and control. They will scorch this earth before they ever do. Okay? That I call it the firestorm. I've broken it down on Jenny's show before, but the way it works is that social cultural destabilization, you have attacks on infrastructure and supply chain, which leads to global economic collapse, and then World War III. Now, Donald Trump has been course correcting their whole narrative the whole time, moves and counter moves. So, for instance, we had the No Kings protest a few weeks ago. Well, we were all told that that was supposed to break out in the riots and everything like that. Well, yeah, that's what we expected. But what happened? Trump rug pulled them. We rug pulled them. And I want to show you how. Number one is we had over 20,000 troops already set up on the U.S. border, which means that if any riots occurred in U.S. cities and the Insurrection Act was deployed, Donald Trump could deploy the U.S. military anywhere in this country within hours. Whereas if the troops weren't on the southern border, it would take a day to 2 days for them to get there. And what would we see? Those cities would be completely destroyed, and we would have the sleeper cells activated, which, by the way, Tom Holmes' team has arrested over 15 Iranians with connection to the IRGC over the last few days. Interesting, isn't it? Now, the other part is that there was a shooting in Minnesota of some Democrat House representatives and senators. That was supposed to be the George Floyd moment, people. That was an inside job to bring about a George Floyd moment to where people, the night of the No Kings protest, rise up and they begin rioting because this guy killed a Democrat House representative and then severely injured a senator. in Minnesota. And we know now that there's connections directly between him and Tim Walz, and that he's even saying to the FBI that, Tim Walz wanted him to take out Klobuchar, which is kind of interesting. But what happened with the narrative? You, me, everybody in here, by utilizing information, completely crushed the left narrative that day. They had nothing to work on because we were out there overwhelming the system with the narrative, and they could not get it out. If you go back and you look at all the liberal left's post that day, he's a Republican who just killed Democrats. Oh my God, he's a terrorist. Republicans are terrorists. They were trying to incite an insurrection, and it failed. We succeeded at that point. So when we start looking at everything that's happening, that was supposed to be step one. That was social and cultural destabilization. That would have begun the problem with crashing the markets. The second part of that equation would have been attacks on the supply chain and infrastructure here in the United States, and that comes about through the riots and the activation of these sleeper cells. Well, that didn't happen because you, me, and Donald Trump all stopped that dead in its tracks. So they go on, well, let's just start and instigate World War III. Israel goes out there, does their thing. Everybody's talking about how this is going to create World War III. The markets begin to drop. I mean, it happened on a Friday, Saturday, so the markets really didn't have time to respond, but crypto responded, and they begin dropping hours before the U.S. drops bombs on Fordo, which means that somebody in the global institutions knew that Donald Trump is going to drop bombs. You have Seymour Hersh comes out a day before we drop bombs on Fordo and says Trump is going to drop bombs on Fordo on Saturday around 6 p.m. But they said there was no leaks. How did he know that? Because that was intentionally leaked to people like Seymour Hersh, which is just a Zionist puppet, to go out to the bankers to begin dropping the market. Because Donald Trump knew that there was already backdoor deals in place and this was not going to go into a full swing World War III, and that the markets would rebound and recover, and these people would drop their positions in the market, which then we go in and scoop it up. And that's exactly what we saw. Now, the markets today don't really reflect reality. They reflect the words of Donald Trump. And that's kind of an interesting point, but it's just the truth of the matter. So, Patriot, I hope that kind of answered. And I can talk about the financial system that's being developed later on.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate that, Josh. That was well in depth. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Patriot. Okay, Abbas, is it Thierry? Abbas, Thierry, your hand's raised. Go ahead. If I said it wrong, I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's okay. What's up, everyone? I have a question. First of all, we know that the case of Iran is so much different than the case of Iraq and Saddam, because Saddam never had anything in his pocket. When it comes to Iran, they have actually some cards, which is the hypersonic missiles. And that's number one reason why Trump can't invade Iran. He can invade Iran, but he won't, because it's going to make chaos, especially if Iran actually got trapped and they have to do some desperate moves. They can do like attack demon a nuclear reactor in Israel, and they're going to make chaos. They can attack a U.S. base in Qatar, a real attack. But Trump knows that. Israel doesn't care about chaos. My question is, do you think Israel going to wait until the end of Trump's presidential term, and then they will try again?
Good question. And I agree with a lot with what you said there. Saddam, you're right, had no cards, and that's why we decimated him in less than just a few hours. Iran, you're right. They have hypersonic missiles. They have advanced drone technology that they got from the U.S. with the ground drone in 2012, which they've shared with China. They have a formidable military. And you're right, Donald Trump never wanted war, but I also believe that Iran didn't want war. And if we look at the back channel communications from 2020 or even present, we can see that Iran doesn't want war. They just want to be a part of the world, but they want kind of the chaos to stop in the Middle East. They want to stop the destabilization that's occurring in the Middle East. So that brings us to the next question you were asking about Israel. Now, this is interesting because I think what we're watching right now is the precursor to a regime change in Israel. Israel's going to be brought into the global front because they just made this war, attacked a sovereign nation, right, about nuclear weapons when the sovereign nation apparently, from the international perspective, doesn't have nuclear weapons, but Israel does. And Israel will not allow nuclear weapons inspectors to come in and check out their nuclear program. It's an undisclosed nuclear program. And this is what Medvedev actually called out. He called out Israel's nuclear program, which is the blackmail utilized against the world. On the other side of the frame, Netanyahu has committed massive atrocities of war crimes around the world, from Gaza to what happened in Iran. He's not going to live this down on the international stage. Even the Israeli people are rising up saying, what the fuck, Netanyahu, this is garbage. And he just barely made it by with the last vote of the Knesset on 2 Thursdays ago. So most likely in 6 months, if it goes to a vote of no confidence, Netanyahu's regime is going to get kicked out, voted out. I think that that's a very good possibility. And potentially Netanyahu could be forced to resign prior to that because of this debacle that we just saw. And I think that what we could potentially see over the course of the next year is Israel have more of a stable leadership that comes in, allows weapon inspectors to come in and check out their nuclear program, because that's going to be demanded by the international community. Not even the international community, the League of Arab Nations. The League of Arab Nations is Turkey, it's Egypt, it's Jordan, it's Qatar, Saudi Arabia. It's over 28 nations. And they are pissed at Israel right now, and they have massive influential power over Donald Trump. So you're most likely going to see them press this on the international community, and Israel is going to have to acquiesce, which is going to be the end of Netanyahu, and it's also going to be the end of this radical destabilizing regime that Israel has perpetuated over the last 30 to 40 years. So I think that we're going to truly see peace in the Middle East, and allow these nations to rise up and become first world nations of their own. I mean, it was just announced, I don't know if people caught this, that Wyckoff just announced that Iran is willing and wanting to join the Abraham Accords. That's huge.
Wow, that is huge. That just happened right now, Josh?
Just announced. We'll be having a big announcement about countries joining the Abraham Accords. It's not implied, but obviously Iran is a part of this. Steve Wyckoff's the one leading the negotiations in that part.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Dominique, your hand was up. Go ahead. Go ahead, Dominique. You requested a mic. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jenny.
Sure.
And Santino, thank you. Joshua, mamma mia, that was fantastic. Is fantastic. Thank you. So I want to bring it back to home base a little bit. I know that, who is this gentleman, Mandani in New York City. So I'm really concerned about all of that. I know that Gavin Newsom isn't having much headway jurisdictionally in California, and I'm hoping that that will be the same for the state of New York City, or New York and the city of New York. But naturally, I'm concerned about, basically the Islamic invasion, which I see it as an invasion, not of all, because I know many people who are Muslim who are beautiful people, but the ones who are extremists, and what motivates them is a caliphate. So what is your take of nullifying that within the United States? Thank you.
Well, you're right. There is a significant problem with socialism and communism on the rise up in the United States. And this Zoran Mamdani just won the primary, which is quite interesting. You have the Republican candidate for mayor of New York City in 2025 is going to be Curtis Silva. I think that he's got a good chance. You have the incumbent Eric Adams said that he's going to run as an independent. I believe that if this is not a fixed election, that most likely we'll see Adams or Silva actually win this. Because at the end of the day, even the majority of Democrats or New York Democrats and liberals, they're not going to go full commie. They're not going to go full socialist. And I think that they will vote for an independent or Republican candidate prior to Zoran right there. So that's at least my thought on it. But it's a rising concern. And I think that you could potentially see a revitalization of I think it's the Communist Enemies Act of 1952 or 1954, something to that nature, where it becomes illegal to join the Communist Party in the United States of America. But although that doesn't stop candidates from running, it does bring about some leeway politically to go against that. But I think that it's up to the American people, truly. And it's up to us to fix our elections and the integrity of the election systems. And this is what Donald Trump is actually pressing right now. And I think over the next year, prior to the midterms, we're going to see a lot of focus on getting the corrupt elections removed and getting fair and clear elections in place.
And I like Swilla. He was the lead or the head of the Guardian Angels in New York City, and he's very much, if I could compare him to anybody or what he might be like, would be Giuliani. He would be the closest to a Giuliani amongst all of them that are, available to New York City right now. So, but there's a big faction right now on X of people saying not to vote for him in particular, which I think is interesting. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. I support him. I think he's great. Adams would be great just because he's working with Trump administration on whatever capacity he is. And anyway, Godspeed, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dominique. Hey, Josh, I know you said you had an hour time. How you doing, my friend?
We can go about 15 more minutes. We can take some more questions. I do only have an hour of time, and I didn't even get started with what I wanted to say. So, but if people got questions, go ahead and join in and ask.
All right, everybody, if you have a question for Josh, please feel free to request a mic. I will unmute your mic. Mary Riley, I'm going to unmute your mic. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mary. Your mic is unmuted. Go ahead, Mary. Your mic is unmuted.
Hey, Josh, thank you for bringing 100% truth information to us. During Trump's first term, he did forgive me if I pronounce it wrong, that tour where he was bringing all the Middle East people
Capitulation.
into peace. Was the attack on those bunkers for the nuclear sites a signal to all of them that stand united together, we are stronger, and not to do anything? And how do we go after Israel's bunkers where their nuclear stuff is held? Because I know we're supposed to stand behind Israel, but not the evil politicians, the Jewish people, because those are God's chosen people. How do we get Israel and destroy their weapons of nuclear? Because I don't trust Netanyahu as far as I can spit.
Right.
Just thought I would ask that.
Yeah, good questions, Mary. Thank you. Number one thing, you were talking about the capitulation tour. Donald Trump in 2019, 2020, he went to Helsinki, started it off, kicked it off, met with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki. He went to China, visited the Forbidden City. He went to Saudi Arabia, got the sword dance, all of these different things. And to me, this was kind of preparatory to what we are seeing right now. This was the leaders of these nations understanding that there is a hidden hand behind everything, operating in the shadows, guiding the world into what I would call commune-fascism, right? A model of the Chinese current government to rule the world. And these nations, they much rather be sovereign states. I mean, when you look at Xi Jinping, think about Xi Jinping. Do you think he wants the globalists to take over to a one world government and for him to no longer have any power? For the Chinese people to no longer have any power? No. He wants global homogeny for himself. So he wants to remain a sovereign nation, which competes on the open markets and then the open military strategies. And so why wouldn't they go along with Donald Trump's deal? And I think Donald Trump's deal with all these nations was, let's get rid of these son of a bitches, and then we can just go about this world as sovereign nations working together for the progression of humanity, and everybody can get wealthy, fat, and happy. And I think that that's what we're seeing right now is the implementation of all of that occurring. Although China does have a deep state, China does have a big part of what is happening globally. Now, as per Israel, what you said with the nuclear weapons, so this is going to be really, really interesting. If people don't know this, Marjorie Taylor Greene said this yesterday, that Israel most likely had a part in JFK's assassination because of his strong defiance of Israel getting nuclear weapons. It was only 2 months later that the NUMEC conspiracy actually occurred, and Israel stole nuclear material directly from the United States out of a facility in Pennsylvania, allowing them to actually get nuclear material. And it was Edward Teller, one of the members of the Manhattan Project, who went to Israel and who is on record and helped them develop their nuclear program. So, and that was covered up by the U.S. government. Now, how do you get rid of nuclear weapons in Israel? You have to. It's going to have to be done through the international community and international intervention. And the first thing that has to happen is you have to get Netanyahu out of power. And you have to bring in a new leader that rises up through the Israeli people, but is more kind of socially structured on the international plane, understands what the Abraham Accords are actually about and bringing stability to the Middle East. And I think that we could actually see that happen. It's not going to happen militarily unless Israel completely goes defiant and the League of Arab Nations has to intervene, which is a very big possibility, which would then be your kind of world war if we're considering it.
Thank you, Mary, for your question. Thank you, Josh. Real quickly, okay, guys, if you guys have a question, please request a mic. I will unmute you. I will unmute your mic. Josh has a few more minutes, but if not, Josh, I want to say to you real quickly, and I want to say to the audience, Josh started out this podcast great, talking about a lot of the naysayers and stuff out there, and I say it all the time to my audience: be careful who you're listening to, who you follow, what you're putting into your mind. So I want to say, and Josh, maybe you would agree or disagree on this with me, but when it comes to these podcasters, influencers, whatever you want to call them, we know the fake news is the fake news, right? And we're seeing a lot of this stuff with some of these podcasters and influencers. If you're not seeing consistency with a lot of these individuals that are calling themselves the influencers, the podcasters, I think you should be really, really cautious of that. If they're wavering, if they're changing the script, then that should be a big red flag to you guys. We're seeing a lot of it happen, everybody. So again, I think it's time to tighten up your circle. It's kind of at that point where you got to pick a side, right? Because we are seeing a lot of these people supposedly supported Trump. Now they don't support Trump, just talking just a lot of BS, a lot of BS. And the battleground really I'm seeing a lot is over here on X. So you need to be really careful. If you don't have a strong mindset, get the hell out of that space, exit, 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 because I'm telling you, we're going to see more and more of this as the days continue. But consistency is key in anything you do in life. And I really strongly suggest, if you're seeing a lot of these influence podcasters, whatever they are, whatever they want to call themselves, not being consistent with the information that they are giving you, I would run and run fast. What are your thoughts, Josh?
Well, yeah, it goes back to that aspect of information warfare. Number one is, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. So, my thoughts are, don't be supporting these people, but absolutely follow them and watch the message that they're portraying. I mean, I was appalled. I went on Rumble the other day, and there's a female, quote unquote, conservative influencer with a very, very big following, who's very, very kind of pro Israel. People can take a guess who this is. She's got a live broadcast with 12,000 people watching live, and I'm sitting here going, this woman knows absolute nothing of what is happening in the world, and she's nothing more than a strong proponent of Israel's global war within the Middle East and complete destabilization, calling Trump the nuke Iran. And she's got 12,000 people watching her. Well, why? Well, it comes about because people tend to go towards the majority. If people see a message that's being perpetuated in front of them, that is the majority message, that's what they're going to align to, because we've lost the ability to free think for ourselves. And I think that's one of the keys. And I have a motto at the Redpill Project, and I urge everybody to go subscribe, redpills.tv, or make sure you're following me here on X at Real Joshua Reid, but I have a motto, and it's never believe anything anybody tells you, no matter who they are or what authority they possess or profess, unless you can prove it with your own research, your own inquiry, your own investigation, and through your own volition. And I think that's something that we need to keep in our minds in the coming days, weeks, months, and years with everything that's going on. Now, I know there's probably maybe one or two more questions, but I just wanted to kind of finish this up, is we have to understand the world we're heading into, people. The reason this is about logistics, resources, and energy is because right now we are in a technological revolution unlike anything that's ever been incurred before on this planet. You can go to the .com boom, and this is 1,000x multiplier on that. You can go to the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution, and what we're going through right now is not even in a comparable metric of that. AI, quantum computing, blockchain technologies are going to rule and dominate the world, and it depends on who controls them of how that ruling occurs. Whether it's free, decentralized, and open source, or whether it's controlled, manipulated, and used to control and manipulate. So we have to understand that this is a very, very critical time, and Donald Trump is laying the pavement, the infrastructure for this new technological revolution. That's why it's all about resources, logistics, and energy, because they who control the resources, energy, and logistics are going to control the technology that's going to be built from it, because the infrastructure has to be built prior to the technology coming out. And that's why we have trillions of dollars in investments coming to the United States, because the United States is winning at this, but we're winning only in the short term because China has been winning in the long run. So we are about to have our whole world flipped upside down technologically. Maybe, Jenny, we can do another show on that specifically. I think we talked about that a little bit last time. And then the new financial system that's coming out from this. And I was never a believer in the quantum financial systems, QFS. I was like, yeah, that's nonsense. But now, after watching what's occurred over the last year and a half, I can absolutely tell you that there is a new foundational economic infrastructure being laid to replace the old guard banking system. And it's a little bit different than, what people would expect with QFS, but it is going to be beneficial to every person in this room, every person in the United States. And this is why all of you need to start thinking about investments into things like crypto, precious metals, technology companies, and understand which ones are going to have the top level upside. So I consult in the real world on these topics. So it's critically important that you understand this, because if you're a business owner and you operate a business of 100, 200 employees, and you're not right now integrating artificial intelligence, you're behind the curve and you're going to be out of business in 5 years. I guarantee you. I talk to business owners every day on this exact topic, because your competition is already doing it. And AI is, I know we have sentient AI and stuff like that, but it is going to revolutionize the way that business is done, the way the world works, the way that everything happens, including data and information in this world. And there's a positive upside to that, but there's a scary back end to that. The scary back end is, if China is set to control this, if the globalists control this, if the British Empire controls this, we're fucked.
We're screwed. It's man against the machine. And wouldn't you agree, Josh, that that's so this is what I tell my audience too, with the three gentlemen that he brought to the forefront soon after he was sworn in for Stargate. He brought those three to the forefront. And if you do some research on those three gentlemen, they have some nefarious ties to them. So again, shining the light on these three individuals of things that they want to do to us. And it's like I've been told that if we don't control the AI, then China's going to control the AI. So what better way to do it than what Donald Trump is doing right now? But in the interim, I do believe he is exposing those three individuals. What are your thoughts on that, Joshua?
Who are the
Josh?
three individuals? I'm sorry. Go ahead with the three individuals.
Well, let's see. It was the guy from OpenAI. I don't know his name.
Oh,
The guy
Sam Altman.
Yeah, and then Stargate, and then little Chinaman.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know what he did there is he nationalized their companies. He made their
Yes.
companies directly overseen by the U.S. government. Not only that is, I don't know if people saw this a few weeks ago, and let me see if I can pull up the post. Oh shit, not what I wanted to do. Let me see if I can pull up the post. Where was it? So a few of these heads, executives in these tech companies, were actually brought on to the U.S. military as colonels.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. So let me actually see if I can find the post here, and I'll read it to you. Tech executives brought into U.S. military. Don't use Google anymore. Just use Grok or ChatGPT.
I've gotten away from Google a long time ago.
Google me.
Google me.
So while you're doing that, real quickly, so again, AI can be used for good, everybody, as well as it can be used for bad, just like anything in life. So I think what Josh is trying to tell you, and I try to tell my audience, that we're coming into the good. We've got to get a hold of it so we can use it for good. Correct,
Right.
Josh?
Right. And here's the news for everybody. Detachment 201, Army's Executive Innovation Corps, established June 13th, 2025. Purpose: an Army Reserve initiative that commissions senior tech leaders as lieutenant colonels, positioned as part-time advisors to embed cutting-edge commercial tech practices, AI, machine learning, AR, VR, into military modernization efforts. Initial appointees: Andrew Bosworth, Meta CEO, Shyam Sankar, Palantir CEO, Kevin Wheel, OpenAI Chief Product Officer, and Bob McCrew, former OpenAI Chief Research Officer and Advisor at Thinking Machine Labs. Okay? In other words, Donald Trump has brought these corporations under the national umbrella. They can't work with China, and now they are embedded within the government. As in, our government has basically nationalized a lot of these companies. That is so critical. And when you get into the sovereign wealth fund, it makes a lot more sense of why he would do that. But they really no longer control their companies. And if you think about like something like the Defense Production Act that Trump can impose, he can go in there and take these companies over like he can with the airlines or Amtrak at any point in time that he wants for his own use. So
So see, everybody, he's doing good things, and people are spinning it into be a bad thing. So thank you for explaining that, Josh, because there's a lot of confusion on this whole AI, open AI, Planeteer, and all that kind of stuff. So yes, I would love to do a show with you on the technology part of it, along with the AI. So I'll obviously get in touch with you on the backside of this. So I've got one more question for you. Can you take it, or you got to go?
yeah, let's rock.
All right, Kate, your mic is unmuted. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't know I had asked to be a speaker.
Oh, well, you requested a mic, so we opened your mic. So go ahead.
Well, I'm just listening and learning. I appreciate it. I don't have anything to add, but it's a
All
great.
right. Thank you, Kate.
How's that lovely horse you're riding there?
Who, me?
Yes, you. in your picture there.
Oh, it's beautiful. We fly through the sky every single night, look down on everybody. I hope that you all have a great day. Thanks for bringing
Thank you,
me back.
Kate.
Jenny, I just want to read something to everybody. CIA has confirmed that a body of credible intelligence indicates Iran's nuclear program has been severely damaged by the recent targeted strikes. This includes new intelligence from the historical, reliable, and accurate source slash method that the several key Iranian nuclear facilities were destroyed and would have to be rebuilt in over a course of a year. The CIA concludes and continues to collect additional reliable sources information to keep appropriate decisions making overnight bodies fully informed. So there's confirmation. I know we always have this thing about the three later agencies, but they're confirming that they have been targeted, they have been hit, and they have been destroyed. And it's going to take over a year. Thank you.
Thank you, Santino. And Josh, thank you so much for being here. Let's schedule you to come back on and do another show for the technology part of it. I would love that.
Cool. Appreciate it, guys. Don't forget to follow at Real Joshua Reid, and we'll talk to you all later.
All right, sweetie, thank you. And then I'll send you once I upload this, I'll get it on over to you. And everybody here, thank you for being here. Come back to my Telegram page at the Revival of America. We are going to have Captain Kyle on with a surprise guest. So that will be at 5:30 Central Standard Time, everybody. So come back over to Telegram and I'll put that link out for those of you that want to join. That's 5:30 Central Standard Time. We will have a surprise guest with Captain Kyle. God bless you all. Have a great rest of your week and we will talk soon. Take care. Thank you, Santino. Always.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.